The UDRcast is not affiliated and does not represent any 12-step fellowship. I, Bill Ward, the host of the UDRcast, will be sharing my experience and my journey of recovery. That does include, but is not limited to, the literature contained in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 Steps. Our guests will be sharing their own path to recovery and what has worked for them. The UDRcast encourages and supports all paths to recovery. Welcome everybody to the UDRcast. UDR stands for Uncover, Discover, and Recover. My name is Bill Ward, and I'm coming to you from the recovery capital of Canada, Calgary, Alberta. Here we are going to discuss everything recovery, different perspectives, different experiences, both with the people I know and with others from around the world. If you resonate with anything you've heard on this episode today, we ask that you share it with anyone who you think may benefit from it. If you have any questions or comments, please find us at billward.life and send us a message in the info section. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. If you are interested in more recovery content, you can find the buttons for the YouTube channel and other social media outlets on the homepage, and you will be redirected to those platforms. We can recover, one person, one family, one community at a time. Okay, so I just want to touch on something that was said in a prayer today. Janina talked about truth. Truth, that's basically what we're trying to get to, right? We're trying to get to authentic truth, where we don't need to fucking act in our defective character. We don't need to act in the manifestations of selfishness, self-seeking, self-centered behavior. When you get to the place of truth within yourself, you don't have to justify your life to anybody. You don't have to justify your behaviors. You don't have to justify your words. You don't have to justify your ideologies or belief systems. When you're fucking good with you on the inside, then you don't give a fuck about what other people think or say. And it's a long road to get there because we've been really bombarded since we've been children and young adults and by all these ideals and belief systems. And most of the ideals and belief systems aren't even yours. They're not even yours to begin with. But you take them as yours because you don't know any different. And then you go out into life and you fucking live in these fears because you're not getting what it is that you're supposed to get based on the bombardment of ideologies. There's one ideology that Creator gave us. It's called love. And when we live with that love, which is the authentic truth of who we are, nothing else fucking matters. And I'm not saying that because I read it out of a book, although I have read it in many books. I'm saying it because my experience is what I'm saying right now. And this big book actually says that, and it actually takes us there. And truth based in the ego is always justifiable. Truth based in insecurity will always try to be justified. And when people say in our general population, I speak my truth, yeah, everyone has their truth, and truth is very subjective, but it's subjective to the experiences and the life that you've lived and the fears that you've created within yourself. And whatever that truth is at the moment, as you're going down this road to have a desire to seek and do God's will, you speak that truth, whatever it is. But it doesn't mean that it's the truth. Because if you're open-minded enough to keep looking diligently within yourself, if you can think honestly, then if you wish, you can join us on that broad highway. With this attitude, you cannot fail. With this attitude, the attitude is God. With the attitude of God, you will not fail. And the book says the consciousness of your belief is sure to come to you. So whatever your truth is, if you're speaking it and you have to justify it over and over and over to your partner, to other people, to your boss, to whoever, you always got to stop and go, what am I justifying here? What am I afraid of? What am I selling out in my own self? for something outside myself. And when you really think of, so there's a saying, and it's called sin, right? The word sin. Everyone knows what sin is. Does anyone know what the word sin means?
Missing the mark.
Means missing the mark. It's like when it's an archery term that the Christians took. And the mark is the bullseye in the center of the bullseye. And that's love. And when we miss the mark, we're acting out in different things. But there's a mark there, and the mark's right here. It's built into us. It's called your guidance system. And it's there to guide your life. But it's covered up by the bombardment of fears and self-delusion, things that we've learned over our lives. And then our journey of lives have built these walls and these insecurities. But the thing is we don't even really know that a lot of these things aren't right. Because that's what we learned in our lives. So in many of these behaviors and beliefs and thoughts, we actually go against the mark. Because our society teaches us to go get it for you. And then whatever you've learned in society, a lot of it is you're stepping on the toes of your fellows. But really you're stepping on the toes of yourself because you're going against your core. You're going against the authentic truth of who you were. And when you do that over and over and over, not even knowing, because God's inside of us and the subconscious is inside of us and the subconscious runs the show. When you go against that over and over and over, you're actually creating shame that you can't fucking see because logically you've been taught that this is the way it should be. But you create shame. You create discontentment. You create restlessness, irritability. And you create a lot of fucking things that aren't good in your life. And then you wonder, why isn't life treating me right? Because you're not living with God. And then the other thing about society and the bombardment of its belief systems, and I call this a false shame, but the subconscious doesn't give a fuck about how it views it. It just views it the same. So if you go against God in you, you're going to create that shame because you're going against the mark. And essence, sin. Okay? But if you don't live up to the ideology of a woman in this society, that is something that you've learned through your five senses, and you try to aspire to live up to these things as a woman. You know, if you don't live up to the idea of marriage, which is another ideology that has been drilled upon people, and being in relationships and feeling inferior because you're single and blah, 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 all these things. Having this amount of money, driving this kind of car, you know, being able to speak, whatever it is. If you can't live up to what these things are, and they're not even real because you've created it based on the system that is around us, you will create shame out of that. And it's based in lack of self-worth, based in lack of authenticity and truth of who you are. So the thing is that no matter what you look at, the shame can be created. And then a lot of the things that we do is guilt. Tyler and I did a podcast recently and he expressed it. Shame is who I think I am. And guilt is what I've done. But if you don't take care of these things as you move down the road of life, the guilt hardens into shame. And this shit down the road will take you the fuck out. Not only does it cause you to drink and do drugs, it takes you out like literally. And so it's really important. What we're doing here today is really important fucking work for ourselves. And then once you get good with yourself and you understand what self-sacrifice is, most people think self-sacrifice is I just go help somebody. No. Self-sacrifice in this program to me means I have to understand self and I sacrifice self in the moment where I'm acting out in self, whether it be a subtle judgment, whether it be a fear, whether it be a lust, doesn't matter what it is. Because what am I doing when I'm judging somebody? I'm going against the mark. I'm not really judging you. I'm actually judging myself. None of the issues outside of me are issues outside of me. They're all issues inside of me. And like our literature says, it is a spiritual axiom that every time I am disturbed, the problem is within me. It's not you guys. So along my journey, and I'm not perfect at this, But there's not a lot of people that actually irritate me or bother me too much. I don't let the words of other people affect me. And like a good example of how I live this life is I work here. Right? I work here. And these guys have a big belief system of working with the mental health. And our society actually teaches most people, work on your mental health, work on your mental health, work on your mental health. But if you keep fucking working on your mental health without working on your spiritual health, you don't fix the fucking problem, because it's all based on a spiritual issue. So these guys here trust me, they're trying really hard. And I'm not here to discredit them. And I'm not saying that my opinion's better. But I believe from my experience in working with so many people in my own life, that the spiritual health is the most important. So I come here and I share what I share, and I actually go against a lot of their ideologies here. And I expressed it at a conference that I was at, and I'm the newest guy here, right? I'm the newest person in this whole team, and there's like 18 of us. And I'm expressing my viewpoint in the spiritual malady and the spiritual health, and fuck the mental health. And I don't mean that literally. Mental health is important too. But it's important after and part of, not instead of. And then I was talking to my elder, and I said to my elder, I said, and people are scared of jobs. People are afraid to lose jobs. People are always worried about themselves, or most of us not concerned with ourselves. Our own self-pity, our own resentments, our own fears. That's what the book says. Yeah, everybody's concerned with themselves. So even in our organization, they're concerned with their own jobs and how they look and what's going to happen. And a guy like me comes in and rocks the boat a little bit. I'm probably the guy that's going to go, because I'm the guy that sticks out like a sore thumb. That's not the case at the moment right now. But as I talk to my elder and I say, you know what, dude? I'm speaking the truth as I see it from my heart and my fucking genuine capacity to help serve other people. And if they deem me that I don't need to work here anymore, then I don't work here anymore. And then I go, okay, I guess Creator needs me somewhere else. And I don't get upset that I don't work here. And then I try not to worry about the financial situation, because I just know that there's another spot that Creator needs me to go. And other people can do what they can do. And if I'm not part of that, you know what? I'm okay with it. But the actual truth is I think because I'm speaking from my heart and with love, and I am helping and making a difference around here, that they're seeing it and they're feeling it, because the power of love is way more vital and felt than the force and the fear. So they feel it, right? And a lot of why I think, and I'm just going to use this place as an example, why I think that some of these places like this don't have a high success rate is because there's so much fear based in what they're doing to help people. They're worried about the community and all the members fucking getting pissed off at them for whatever it is, because there's a lot of politics out here, right? Like there is everywhere. And the politics people get afraid of. And then people are afraid to lose their jobs. So they're afraid to like get in someone's face and tell them the truth. So we just keep catering to them and keep patting them on the ass and keep catering to their self-pity and to their insecurities. And basically we're letting them run the fucking show, and people don't fucking stay sober. Because you can't live in fear and help people and fucking perpetuate the problem, even though your intentions are good in what you're doing. You gotta be truthful and leave the results up to God. That's why I've worked with a lot of sponsees. They die. People have died that I've worked with. But that's not on me. And the thing about what we're talking about here is, for anyone like here that's really wanting to fucking be a spearhead for God's ever-advancing creation, you really want to be the best version you can, it's a fucking long, lonely road. Most people are not fucking going to do what we're talking about. And the spiritual life is not a theory. We have to fucking live it. And understanding that the fellowship you crave will grow up about you isn't just the fellowship of Tradition 3. We've all lived in Tradition 3 fellowship. It's fucked. There's lots of sickness in that fellowship. But there's way less sickness in the fellowship of the Spirit. And when you walk the fellowship of the Spirit road, that fellowship you crave will grow up about you. And these people are attracted to you, and you fucking have these like-minded higher levels of consciousness, and you're working together collectively without judgment and fear and understanding when the relationships are meant to go, they just go. There's not a resentment in like, fuck you, they're not fucking paying attention to me. Oh, you haven't called me this week. There's none of that shit in that. Right? There's none of that. So just remember, when it is lonely and when it is a hard road, it's the fucking way it's supposed to be. It's not easy. If it was easy, everyone would do it. Right? If fucking healing was easy, that's essentially what we're doing. If we can get back to that love-centeredness, God as we understood him. When did I understand God? When I was a fucking child and I was fearless and I believed in anything and my fucking dreams were my reality. And I could play with anything and I was connected, not even trying to be. That's what we're trying to get back to. Through the pain and humiliation is where we get it, man. That's where we get her done. That's why I love what you're doing. Because you're going through it. You're growing through it. If you were going through it, you'd be fucking miserable and you'd be resentful and you'd be fucking probably going down Banana Peel Trail. But we don't go through anything. We grow through everything. And we don't fucking stop. Right? And that's the shit that inspires me. I have people ask me all the time, who inspires you? Fucking everybody inspires me. Anyone who wants to change their life. And even the ones who don't want to, you know. They fucking give me an opportunity to pray for them. And the way I'm talking and the way I am today is not the way I fucking was. I was mean and angry and violent. And I fucking gave a fuck about myself only. Not my kids or my wife, although I loved them. But I was very selfish and self-centered to the core. And I don't need to be, man. And my life today, like that's why I had so much gratitude this weekend. I woke up a few times, like I got my new girlfriend. I actually ran into my ex-girlfriend on the road yesterday while we were walking. And like there's a big pull there still too, right? But I'm like, no, man. I don't need that anymore. I don't need that. I love myself more than that today. And my new girlfriend fucking adores me. And she's fucking there to fucking work with me. Not to judge me, not to fucking make me feel bad. And I don't need that. My relationships with my kids are top shelf. My ex-wife, top shelf. Everyone in my life, these relationships are top shelf. And before I came here, I had like $1 million house, boats, fucking trucks. Like I had everything, but I had nothing. That's why I prayed and I said, Creator, thank you for destroying my life for me. Because he didn't destroy it. He built with me and did with me as he willed so that I could fucking sit here today and say, I'm fucking grateful for my life today. Because I don't have all that shit. I have a fucking fully furnished 2-bedroom apartment. That is fucking freedom from the bondage of self, I'll tell you. I got a fucking humble little 2002 Escape, right? That has a fucking power steering pump leak. But I'm fucking grateful for this fucking shit, right? I'm grateful for my friendships, for the help that I get, for the people that fucking come in my life, and even the ones that fucking say bad shit to me. Common sense thus becomes uncommon sense. God will necessarily provide for you what you need if you stay close to him and perform his work well. And a lot of people don't really get that. And you won't get it until you're down the fucking road. But a life of service, I'm telling you guys, it's the fucking keys to the kingdom. It's the fucking keys to the kingdom, man. And whoever would have thought, not me. Thought you put your hand up to chime in on the life of service.
No, I was thinking, when you were saying that though, I was thinking about, maybe that's why I scratched my head. You know, I was sharing with you that story about how that guy just offered me that place last Wednesday night after that sweat, right out of the blue. And I used to do that 25 years ago when I first started this journey. I used to go to sweats and I was the firekeeper, and anytime anybody came to town, they knew we had a nice big 4-bedroom place, and the door was never locked. So whenever they were in Edmonton, ceremonial family would just kind of come in and just walk through the door and make themselves at home, even if it was the middle of the night. Sometimes we'd have people on our couch. We'd wake up in the morning, there's 3-4 people sleeping on the couch, you know, they're just making a stop on the road. And when that happened to me, what I told that guy was, after he told me his story, what I told that guy was, I said, I was you 20 years ago. I said, and now, like, I was the one that, you know, was gifting, you know, being of service, and here I've been on this journey for the last 4 days, being of service, you know, and I didn't even know I needed something. I needed a place to stay. I didn't even know I needed something. And, you know, my heart, or your higher power, put it in your mind to offer me a place to stay tonight. And now that gift that I gave all those people, all that service that I gave all those people all those years ago, I feel like is, you know, one tiny little blessing coming back to me. That's what I told that guy. So you got a good road ahead of you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know, those gifts come, they just take time for them to start coming.
And part of your story back there was why I started like that. But I've been listening to so much shit this weekend and hearing and getting answers and talking to people, and I just have a lot of gratitude right now. So anyway, let's go. Page 52. And we stopped here last week for a reason. Wasn't only the reason that I had to get out of here, but there was another reason. I didn't want to get into this. So first full paragraph on 52. But in most fields, our generation has witnessed a complete liberation of our thinking. Showing a longshoreman a Sunday supplement describing a proposal to explore the moon by means of a rocket, he will say, I bet they do it, and maybe not so long either. Is not our age characterized by the ease which we discard old ideas for new, by the complete readiness which we throw away a theory or gadget which does not work for something new that does? So I got this phone. You give me a brand new phone tomorrow, tells me it drives my car and does all this shit. I'm going to throw this one away and I'm going to believe whatever they tell me. You give me a car and you tell me I don't have to steer it or whatever. I'm just going to believe anything today. And that's what this is saying. You know, is not our age today, our times today, characterized by the ease which we discard an old idea for a new one? And the complete readiness with which we throw the theory or the gadget which does not work for something new that does? That's what we live in. So we had to ask ourselves, why shouldn't we apply to our human problems the same readiness to change our point of view? Am I going to keep running my own life the way that I've always ran it, or am I going to give this God shit a chance? Right? That's what it's saying. Why can't I change my mind and fucking give God my life and say, you know what? Here, I'm going to let you try it. Because the way I'm doing, it's not working. It fucking takes me to the rooms of addiction rooms. It takes me to self-pity. It takes me to anger. It takes me to hate. Let me try something fucking new, right? Selfish self-centeredness, that's what we think is the root of our troubles. And when you think of that, the root, man, the root, our problems, we think they arise out of ourselves. These problems of selfish self-centeredness are arising deep down within us. And they're coming out in the manifestations of anger and sex and porn and whatever the fucking judgment, right? But all of these things that we're fighting are based in the ideologies of what we fucking learned. And we created shame and guilt in that. And then when we act out in that, we create more shame and guilt. Based on us trying to get what it is that we think we need or what society tells us it is. But it doesn't work. Okay? So here is the selfish self-centeredness. Here is the unmanageability of step one is right here. Exactly right here. 1, we were having trouble with personal relationships. 2, we couldn't control our emotional natures. 3, we were a prey to misery and depression. 4, we couldn't make a living. 5, we had a feeling of uselessness. 6, we were full of fear. 7, we were unhappy. 8, we couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. Was not a basic solution of these problems more important than fucking anything? Yeah, it is. We want the opposite of this. This is exactly the opposite of what I want in my life. But I can guarantee every one of you, when you first came into the program, you had at least 7 or 8 out of these, guaranteed. The only one that you might not have had is you could make a living. Maybe you were able to make some money. But a lot of people have all 8 of them. And the one that you didn't have, make a living, probably kept you out of fucking admission of your issue for years. Because if you can still make money, that will keep people out of getting help for a long fucking time. And I call these the step 0 promises. Every step in this program has promises. Well, before you get here, you're living some promises. And they're called the step 0 promises. And they're right here. And if you don't work a real program of recovery, here's your fucking promises back. And they will come back one by one by one. And you will be living back in selfish self-centeredness. You will be living in the spiritual malady. You'll be restless, irritable, discontented, unless you can again experience a sense of ease and comfort that comes at once by taking the first few drinks again. As you succumb to the desire, you will fail to resist if you live in this shit right here. And the knowledge that you have about your illness, about substance abuse, and your willingness to be on guard and not go to certain places and fucking not hang out with certain people, yeah, that'll work for a little while. But it will never fucking work for a long time. The only thing that works, and the reason why we need God, is we need God to fucking live the opposite of these, 1. And we need God, and if I live the opposite of these, I won't need to pick up a drink. But if I start living in these promises again, and this is a barometer for your recovery. If you read these today and you can go, okay, I have fucking 4 out of 8. There's some work to do. If you got 3 out of 8, right? 2 out of 8, 1 out of 8. But you should check these out every now and then in your life and see where you're at with it. Why? Because we have to constantly remind ourselves we are no longer running the show. Why? Because selfish self-centeredness is fucking cunning, baffling, and powerful. And it fucking sneaks back in there. And it's not the substance that's cunning, baffling, and powerful. Okay? It's our fucking thinking. At a certain time, the alcoholic has no effective mental defense against the first think. It's all about the thought. And if you don't fucking start managing your thoughts, then you will fucking drink again. And how we manage our thoughts and how we fucking let shit go is we use God. Anyone who knows me knows I'm a step 6 fucking Nazi. Because step 6 is about the change of what am I going to give to God? What am I going to relinquish? Am I aware of it? Am I willing to do it? Anna talked about the humiliation and the pain of the growth. That's what step 6 is about. If you're willing to let it go, if you're willing to try something different, if you're willing to let that easy piece of tail fucking be and not go for it. If you can keep your mouth shut and not fucking voice your opinion and double barrel somebody with anger. If you can sit in the meeting and listen to this guy who annoys you and you can fucking pray and ask God for the willingness to fucking not be like that. If somebody can say something to you and you take offense, do you have the willingness to fucking pray and forgive this person? That's what it's talking about. The ego says, no, fuck you. I don't want to forgive that person. The ego says, no, fuck you. Go get that piece of tail. Add another notch on your belt. Right? The ego says, no, fuck you. You need to justify your fucking answer. No, you don't. No, you don't. You don't have to. And in those moments, if you're fucking stuck in self-pity and you're afraid of conflict and you can't stand up, in that moment you bring God and you ask God for God's power that I step into that moment and I try something different. Right? Because you're avoiding conflict outside of you. The fucking conflict's right fucking here. That's where the conflict is. So if you're avoiding conflict, if you're a conflict avoider, you're never avoiding the conflict. Because the conflict is right fucking here. And if you're not truthful with yourself at whatever level that is through your recovery, good fucking luck. And if you keep allowing a person, place, or thing or defect of character to keep taking away your peace, serenity, and contentment, then it's on you. How many times are you going to get beaten by yourself before you turn it over in the step 3, in the step 10, in the step 6? Really, right? And that is the design for living, step 1, 2, and 3. You know, typically for anyone new, step 1, 2, and 3 is all about substance. Well, in the design for living, it's about step 1 is I'm powerless over people, places, things, and situations. And if I keep allowing a person, place, a thing, situation, or a defect of character to take away my peace and serenity and contentment, I got to go, why? Why am I allowing this over and over and over? Because that is the same insanity as me picking up the drink stone cold sober. I'm stone cold sober and I keep letting this person in my life and they keep fucking with me. No, I'm letting them fuck with me. And then, yeah, it's going to be hard to turn it over and maybe allow that person to get out of my life. That's where I go to God. That's where I got to have trust in him. That's where the humiliation and the pain is. Through that is where I bust through the veil and I get to do something different. And what am I actually doing? I'm healing. I'm healing. And God's love and God's strength and power is what fucking allows me to do it. Left to my own power, I'm fucking back in that shit. And I'm letting that person, place, or thing because I get some type of false sense of security out of it. The only real security that you got in your life is your ability to contend with it, whatever it is that you're trying to contend with. And are you going to contend with it with God, or are you going to contend with it in your fear and defective character? So really, there's no real security in the world, in my opinion, other than your ability to learn how to contend with it. And the only way I've learned how to do that is with my Creator. That's the security. And like everyone is going to leave you at some point in your life. Everybody. So make that relationship with God, because God will never leave you. Because he is you. He is part of you. You know, the unsuspected inner resource. Resource. He's resourcing me because I am him. So these step 0 promises. This is self. This will take you out. This is the unmanageability. And if you live in it long enough, you're fucking drinking. And I love the ending of that. You know, it talks about, was not a basic solution to these bedevilments more important than whether we should see newsreels of lunar flight? Of course it was. Yeah, it's much more important for me to live the opposite of these. That's what I want. I want the opposite of this. Well, when we saw others solve their problems by a simple reliance upon the spirit of the universe, we had to stop doubting the power of God. Our ideas did not work, but the God idea does. And when we think about that line, we see, you know, anyone who is new, and I remember when I was new, I would see other people it seemed like they were solving their problems with this reliance upon a God. And I'm like, is that even real? Is this guy like full of shit? Like, what's he on? Is he fucking drink? Like, seriously, I'd even see people like closing their eyes in the meetings, and I just thought they were just like passing out from the night before, but they were meditating and shit, right? And now I am that guy that I used to be like, yeah, I don't know, this guy's full of shit, right?
Just all meditating and get up and like, fucking spirituality, buddy. Oh my God, he's got me that one time.
Right?
It works.
It worked that night.
It did.
But it brings me back to what we read last week, right? And, you know, I wish I had what that man has. I'm sure it would work if I could believe as he believes. But we had to start at a simpler level. We had to start somewhere, right? And that's basically what we're talking about. That was growth. But if we wish to grow, we had to begin somewhere. So we used our own conception of God, however little that was. And however afraid we are, that's why I get people to pray out loud here. Because when you pray out loud, you're not... Usually when people pray out loud, like everyone says, oh yeah, me and my God, me and my God, me and my God. Okay, let's hear you and your God talk. No one wants to do it. Why? Because there's that feeling of guilt and shame within them that they can't fucking say that because you feel judged. Once you get through that, if you can get through praying out loud in front of people, you will fucking get through tons of shit. So I implore anybody who is afraid to pray out loud to take a chance. Call on your Creator for that strength to fucking break through that fucking fear. Because this is like the truth. Everyone says that them and their God are really tight and they fucking love their God and everything. And I'm not saying that they don't. But why is it when it comes, push comes to shove, you can't express that out loud in front of other people? Yeah, and just praying in front of people, it allows you to become more authentic with yourself, right? And like there's people that'll pray, like even my elder, he's really spiritual and shit. And I remember when I would pray in front of him, I'd be like, oh shit, I can't do that. My prayers aren't like his.
Right.
But I already learned a lot of lessons at that point, and I was like, fuck it, man. This is my God. He loves me no matter what. I'm going to fucking say what I have to say, even if it's only 10 seconds or if it's 20 seconds. And that gives me the strength in my own Creator. And it gives me like more power like in the world, right? More than you can really resonate with. And when you're awake, you'll see Him everywhere, in everything. Like I shared last week. As we go in our lives and we're living our lives, usually you start realizing first that the people are your teachers. That you have something to learn through the contract of every interaction with every human being. And when you get to that point where every person is an interaction and you can bring something of service or you can learn something about yourself, if you keep doing that, you'll walk outside and you will see nature the exact same way. You will see everything the same way. And that's kind of really, I think, part of the goal. All my relations. All my relations, for anybody that doesn't know, means Creator has no separation between human, animal, plant, fish, dirt, anything. It's all equal. Who are we to say what is fucking less than us or anything? But we do, you know. Dogs are less than us. Animals are less than us. We decide who lives and dies. Like, who the fuck are we? Right? But the thing about human law is there's a spiritual law that actually overrides any human law. And I'm going to use this as an example. I listened to this elder, McAdam, on YouTube. He's a famous elder out of the Okanagan. And he talked about the treaties. And I don't want to get into politics about the treaties or anything. But this guy shared about the sweetgrass. Because it's all my relations, and Native people love their natural medicines. And then the pipe. The native pipe, you know, on cartoons and shit, it's about the peace pipe, and they kind of make it what it isn't. And that peace pipe is the fucking male and female unity. And then when you smoke the pipe, it's these prayers are going to Creator. And whatever the intention, like when I'm working as an escapio, if I'm not clear and I get to load the pipe, which isn't often, if like my ego's there and I'm in fear and shit, my elder says no. I have to be like clear. Because whatever my intention, if my intention is fear going into this pipe and we smoke it, that's not good. So I got to be pure in my thoughts, and then I load the pipe with the 4 directions, 6 directions actually. But my point to that was, I don't fucking know. I totally forget.
The spiritual world over top of the human world that...
Oh, so McAdam's talking about these treaties, and the white men and the Indian people, the white people came and they said, okay, here's the treaties, and they wrote up the treaties, and the natives agreed, and then, but a lot of the treaties were broken, okay? So McAdam's like, okay, it seems like it's okay to break the treaties, but really, the fucking contract was in the pipe. The contract was with Creator. It was not with the white guy and the Indian guy. It wasn't with the white guy and the brown guy. It was a spiritual contract made with the Creator, and that can never fucking be broken. And when you miss the mark, and society can miss the mark too, there's fucking karma that comes around. In our culture, it's full circle. Everything's circle. The world is about balance, right? And there's balance of negative and positive. And there's balance of fucking light and dark. Like, it's all balance, right? So he was saying that that contract is not actually nullified in the way that maybe the government thinks it is. Because the spiritual law that is all based in love and principle, that is actually what will really override any man law. So that's important to remember. And when you look at people, and I'll use this example, I've sponsored so many people, older people too, and then a lot of people have like their dads and moms or uncles that they grew up with. And usually what I've noticed over the years is when people live like really selfish, self-centered lives and they step on the toes of their fellows and they're not doing good things in this world, by the time they hit their 50s, 60s, and 70s, they're turning into pretty cynical and miserable people. And then they feel that guilt and that shame because they've missed the mark so long and they don't know what's wrong. And often they're lonely and they will start trying to make an amend to their children or to their families or to their spouses by like giving them things and doing things that are totally out of character, but they won't likely say I'm sorry because they've never learned how to say they're sorry. But this is what's coming back on them, right? And then a lot of people, when they're older, they get hooked on the alcohol or the drugs, and it fucking just takes them down hard. So it's important to live like my teacher tells me, like a straight willow. When we go to pick willows, we only look for the straight willows. Because if I pick a willow that's all crooked, then that symbolizes the way I'm going to live my life. And whenever we put our chopped up wood by our sweat lodge fire, we look at our pieces of wood that we've chopped and we put it so that the branches are pointing up if the branches were on the log still. Because if we put them upside down, that symbolizes that's our lives are upside down. So we do everything like straight. We try to, right? Because that's the native way. And that's the way of this book. They're just totally in alignment with each other. Both based in genuine humility. And humility means a desire to seek and do God's will. And in our culture, I'll go back to our culture, 500 years ago and beyond, the men and the woman took care of the elderly and the children. The elderly and the children were the most respected and honored out of them all. The men and the women played the roles that they were assigned, and no one was better or worse. But in our society, it's the children and the elderly that aren't respected as much. And it's the middle people, because our society is based in individualization. In our book, it talks about selfish self-centeredness. Our whole society is perpetuated on the ideal of self, individual, which is why selfish self-centeredness is at the root of our trouble. And because of the perpetuation, all the fears and all the ideas and belief systems that we get are all about us. Get a good job. Go get this. Be the best hockey player. Get this award. Do this, do this, do this. Get it all for you. Go get these things and get them for you so that you can be happy. Well, fucking 500 years ago and beyond, everything was pretty cool and the fucking nations were pretty happy because they honored and they gifted everything and everything was built in a common unity. Nothing was taken or wasted. And if buffalo was killed, it was all used, right? Everything was used. Any animal that was used, they only took what was enough. They never picked more medicines than was enough. You go pick medicines with a white person, they're fucking taking as much as they can. I need this for later. But First Nations people typically won't pick that much because they get that, right? And like as we teach, and I learned that because I always wanted to pick more. Fuck, I might need it for like next year, right? And then my elders are like, no, we only pick what we need. We don't ever take more than what's due to us. But in our society, we're always taking what's more and due to us, right? So these things are all important, right? Any comments, questions, or anything? Seeing as how I'm only Not even a page in.
Back to the bottom of your bags, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to cruise along now. Our ideas did not work, but the God idea did. The Wright brothers' almost childish faith that they could find and build a machine which would fly was the mainspring of their accomplishment. Without that, nothing could have happened. We agnostics and atheists were sticking to the idea that self-sufficiency would solve our problems, when others showed us that God's sufficiency worked for them. We began to feel like those who had insisted the Wrights would never fly. This is really fucking important. Logic is great stuff. We liked it. We still like it. It is not by chance that we were given the power of reason to examine the evidence of our senses and to draw conclusions. That is one of man's magnificent attributes. We agnostically inclined would not feel satisfied with the proposal which does not lend itself to reasonable approach and interpretation. That's what I was saying about examining the evidence of our senses. Seeing and learning about what's in front of you, hearing. This is how we base our lives, is from what we've seen. We've examined the evidence of our senses. We can use the reasonable approach and interpretation of our mind based on the experiences of life and what life shows us it is about through the five senses only. Okay? Hence, we were at pains to tell why we think our present faith is reasonable, why we think it more sane and logical to believe than not to believe, why we say our former thinking was soft and mushy and we threw up our hands in doubt and said we don't know. When we became alcoholics crushed by our self-imposed crisis, we could no longer postpone or evade. We had to fearlessly face the proposition that either God is everything or he's nothing. He either is or he isn't. What is our choice to be? So when we first come into the program, and for me, I remember when I read this, all I thought I had an issue with was the substance abuse problem. That's all I really thought I had an issue with. So I agreed, okay, I'm crushed by this fucking addiction. I don't really believe that God is everything. Trust me, I did not one bit at all at that point. But I was like, well, I'm going to say he's everything because that's what they want me to say. And I don't really have any other options. So, okay, God's everything. But I really believed way more in my sponsor than I did in this book. So I just kind of went along with what my sponsor said. And then I just did what he told me to do. And I was like, okay, God's everything. And so he's like, okay, you got step 2. So I'm kind of giving you step 2. But really, when we really pull this fucking paragraph apart, the alcohol and the drugs are never the issue. We all know that, okay? Selfish self-centeredness is at the root of our issue. And when we get crushed by our own self-imposed crisis, that we could no longer postpone and evade. The self-imposed crisis is your inability to confront somebody and think that you're avoiding conflict. And then you get so fucking beat up by your own inability to speak the truth that you're fucking in one of the step 0 promises. Maybe it's driven you to prey to misery and depression. Maybe you're so beaten by your own defect that you can't control your emotional natures and you're breaking down in tears, or you're lashing out in anger, or you're fucking judgmental, or whatever it is. You know, you have a feeling of uselessness because you can't speak up for yourself. And because you can't speak up for yourself, you live more of these step 0 promises. So the thing about these defects, for me, anger, I'll use anger. For a lot of my life, it actually expanded my life. It allowed me to fucking navigate life okay. But the thing about as you get older and you're sober, in the big book, in Bill's story, it talks about the drink, Bill W. forging the weapon, which is alcohol, that would one day turn in its flight and cut him to ribbons. So as we have the substance, and it did work. Remember when it was pretty good and it actually worked and it fucking kind of medicated our spiritual malady and it wasn't bad. But at some point we forged this weapon that one day turns in its flight and it fucking cuts us to ribbons. And we can't drink and we can't not drink. But it's the exact same thing with the defect of character. My anger forged the weapon and it worked for me, but then it turned in its flight and it started cutting me to ribbons. For two reasons. One, because I went against the mark my whole life, and there was so much shame accumulated over time with acting in anger and violence and going against the mark and trying to hide it and fucking avoid it, which I did for a long time until I couldn't anymore. But once I'm in recovery, and anger fucking brought me to my knees because it doesn't serve me anymore. It turns in its flight and it starts cutting me to ribbons. And if I don't deal with that shit, it deals with me. So it doesn't matter what your defects are, you will become possibly crushed by your own self-imposed crisis that you can no longer postpone or evade. Whether that's relationship hopping, whether it's porn, whether it's gambling, whether it's fucking judgment of others, whether it's fucking self-pity, doesn't matter really what it is, because it'll all come to a head at some point. And you might be able to fucking put one of them away, and then let the whack-a-mole, the other one pops up. And until you're willing to like look at the whole program as a whole and do all of what it fucking asks you to do, you will keep, your disease will keep finding the crack, but you will keep fucking hitting a bottom. And if you don't deal with it, it just deals with you, and you fucking drink again, or you jump off a bridge, or jump off a rope, or go in your garage and put a pipe in your window and suck in exhaust. Right? So, and then as we get into this next paragraph, I arrived at this point. At what point? At the point where I can no longer postpone and evade myself. I can't put anything between me and me anymore. And when you think about whatever it is you're avoiding, you're always trying to put something between you and you. And eventually you can't put anything between you and you anymore. And you arrive at this point. And you're squarely confronted with the question of faith. So you get squarely confronted with the question of faith. Okay, is God fucking everything here? I mean, I'm now fucking backed into a corner and I can't fucking get out of it. And I'm here now, and I did it myself. So I'm squarely confronted with the question of faith, because I know any life run by me is fucking not successful, and I wouldn't be back in this corner if it was successful. So now what? Well, our last resort is always God, right? In the last analysis, the last thing is always God. We try to manage and pry and manage it ourselves and put people in place of it and fucking try to figure it all out. Let's get a new job. Let's get this. Let's do all these things. Doesn't fucking work. Eventually, you're fucking crushed by it. So you're squarely confronted with the question of faith. Is God going to help me? We couldn't duck the issue anymore. And think about it. What issue are you ducking, man? What is it in your life that you're ducking? And meditating on this shit is a good idea. Praying and meditating. Taking that minute to get deep inside yourself. Asking yourself the truth. You know, what is it that I'm not fucking willing to look at? Because until you're willing to accept and honor whatever it is that's fucking with you, you can't work yourself out of it. Because you're still in resistance mode. You couldn't work on your substance abuse problem until you were fucking conceded to your innermost self. You can't work on your relationship issues, your lust issues, your anger issues until you concede to your innermost self. But the pride doesn't want to admit some of these things. My pride didn't want to admit that I was angry and still angry at 3 years sober. Because don't you know, I've been working the program for 3 years and fucking, right? But I learned the hard way that I had to fucking get God's help because it was fucking me. And it takes time, right? You got 3 and a bit years, and more is constantly revealed. The more the patterns of sobriety show themselves, but only in sobriety. You will never see the patterns of sobriety till you get time in sobriety. And what's that's actually called is we close the gaps. We're closing the gaps. Humility has all these layers to it too, right? When I act out in a defect, so I'm going to share a little story with you. When I was 14 months sober, I had heard, don't sleep with newcomers. I heard it. Didn't really understand much. Still pretty new in the program. And then this 6 month sober chick, we'd been hanging out as a group, and then we all went home after that night. We were just, I don't know what we were doing, playing pool or bowling or like at a show or something. And then I was on my way home, and then this chick texted me, and she's like, hey. I'm like, hey. And she was like 20 years younger than me, and just a smoke show, and fucking she was like hinting, like, and I'm like, And I'm like, this is probably not a good idea.
Watch me do it.
But I pulled my truck over, and I had to pray on it, right? And I'm praying like, okay, I know this is not a good idea, but I'm debating it, right? So I didn't just I didn't go home. I pulled over, and now I'm debating it.
Progress, right?
Yeah, progress.
Yeah,
So I'm like, okay. Here's Bill's will, here's God's will. I crumpled up God's will and threw it out the window, and I went back to her place, and then it was on. And it was fun. And then the deal was, so now we're making a deal. The deal is we'll be friends with benefits. As long as she doesn't fall in love, it's a good fucking deal, right?
I heard this on your podcast.
Yeah.
I heard this shit.
Right. So then a month later, we're hanging out, and everything's been going good, keeping it on the down low. And then I just realized that one moment, I'm like, holy fuck, you're falling in love. She's like, yeah, I can't help it. And I'm like, fuck, man, that's not the deal. So anyway, I fucking said, we can't do this anymore. And so I broke up with her, even though I wasn't even going out with her. But all these decisions... Right. See, this is early recovery, man. Decision based on self, one after another. Everything's based on the best of intention. Like, I didn't just come up with this shit one day, right? Fucking live this shit. So then we break up, and then 2 weeks later, she's fucking relapsed. But I had been sharing, this is why God-centered pillars came out of this too. Like, so many things that I say and that you hear in the program today that came from Jesse and I. But the God-centered pillars was like, okay, I was sharing a lot of my recovery with this chick who was like 6 months or a year sober like me. And I would tell her all the stuff thinking, I could trust her, and it was in confidence and shit. And then, so I tell her this, and then she quits talking to me. She's not my friend anymore. And then now she's like fucking spreading all these rumors everywhere. Just beaking off about fucking all this shit about me. And I'm like, you fucking bitch. Right? And anyway, I got major humiliation out of that experience. I was fucking condemned and ostracized and blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't like no one else was doing it. Everybody else was doing that shit, right? I just, for some reason, I got it worse. But whatever. So then I realized in those moments when I went to my sponsors and I told them the story, he's like, dude, when are you going to realize it's not everyone fucking else? It's you. You made the decisions. You did this shit. And then I realized, fuck, I'm not even able to be honest with myself. That's where that came from. I'm incapable of honesty on my own. I will rationalize and justify anything, the most errant nonsense to suit my actions in my life or my inaction in my life. And so I realized, okay, I can manipulate my own sponsors to some degree and not even try. Right? So then I realized I need more people, and I better get fucking honest. And honesty is rigorous honest, which means accurate. So I started fucking doing things differently. But that humiliation and that pain fucking was so fucking painful. But because I didn't drink, and I arrived at this point, I was squarely confronted with the question of faith in so many fucking areas. And I realized that I had to fucking grow or die. And I knew that I couldn't fucking go justify everything to everybody. Like, everything that I'm talking to you guys about, this is my life, right? I don't need to justify the truth. It came from my own experience based on that. You know, just everything came out of these stories through my own recovery. But today, that thing there, that actually was the launching point of me fucking connecting myself really with what this program is. Because I didn't want to die. I didn't want to be in lust anymore. I didn't want to be angry. I didn't want to judge people. I didn't want any of that shit anymore. So I look at that. I thank that fucking woman today. And every now and then, honestly, she does come back and she tries to do the same shit. And I remember about 4 years ago, I brought it up to some of my pillars. I'm like, dude, don't even worry about it. Fuck, you're such a different person. She's just going to make herself look like a fucking idiot. What did she do? She made herself look like a fucking idiot. Right? And that's where I'm like, you don't have to justify what's right. You don't have to justify the truth of who you are. At whatever level that is as you go. And later when you go down the road further, that truth won't be based in any of your insecurities for the most part. It'll be based in fucking love for yourself and love for other people. Then nothing else fucking matters. And through the relinquishment of self, you will want to be helpful to God's fucking kids. And through the help service to God's kids, you find everything you ever fucking looked for the other way. So the humiliation and the pain, fuck yeah, man. It's worth it. But in those experiences, that's the inner turmoil that most people go, fuck it. I'm drunk. Or fuck it. They act in anger. Or they fucking try to justify her. They fucking try to get her back. Like, get back at her. I'm acting in self. If I do any of those things, then I will fucking drink because the conflict's here. So I had to fucking take my conflict to Creator and my God-centered 12-step pillars. And I had to fucking go through the inner turmoil so I could find the serenity, which is where I live most of the time, which is why I'm so grateful for my life most of the time. Trust me, I can still fall into the rabbit hole on self. But I've learned through the experience of humiliation again that I have a choice. How far down the rabbit hole am I going? Because if I'm aware of what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, and I fucking don't take action to stop it, it ain't fucking stopping. So we have a choice. But we close the gaps over time. Because there's been many times I went down the rabbit hole. You know how hard it is to crawl out of that fucker? Holy fuck. Hey, Janine? Yeah, it's tough. Tough to climb out. Okay, let's take a break. Thank you for tuning in to the UDRcast. We hope you have enjoyed this episode. The viewpoints and the opinions expressed today were solely of the individual sharing them. If you resonated with this episode, please follow us and share this link with anyone that may benefit from it. Please visit us at Billwardlife to see everything that we have going on. We can recover, one person, one family, one community at a time.